All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's 7 o'clock. Happy New Year. My name's Elisa Lukey. I'm the Vice President of Highland Park Community Council, and I'm stepping in for this meeting and our next meeting in February because our wonderful President Jason is soon to be a father again, which is very exciting. So if you have any questions, still please feel free to email our Highland Park Community email account. It's being moderated by multiple people. But welcome and Happy New Year. So I have a couple of announcements. We'll go through a couple committee updates, and then we will have a presentation from the Union Project on some really exciting updates for them, as well as then we will go to our wonderful landscaping architectural firm we've engaged forward to help us design the parklet. And Ellen is on the call, who will be giving us a really exciting update from a lot of our survey and feedback initiatives we've done across the year and kind of culminating at Light Up Night in December. So the first update I have is that we had such a wonderful turnout at our last wine tasting event last year that we are planning to do another one this year in April. So please mark your calendars for Friday, April 24th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. We will be doing it at the Highland Park Tower again, which just has fantastic views of the neighborhood. And Jack Bryce, our local wine expert and connoisseur, who's also on the board at HPCC, will again be selecting a few wines and talking to us about the history of the wineries and kind of how to taste with your palate at the event. So it should be really exciting. We'll be beginning selling tickets probably in the next week or two. The tickets will be $100 per person, and we'll cover both wine and hors d'oeuvres. And just note that we did actually sell out last year. So our first wine tasting event for the community sold out. So please make sure you buy your tickets early. The next update I have is I'm going to send it to Stephanie Walsh, who runs our Parks Committee for us. So Stephanie.
I'm,
Thanks.
I'm sorry, could I just get a recap on the date? April
Absolutely.
24th?
April 24th at
Okay.
5:30 p.m.
That's also the weekend of the NFL draft. I don't know if that affects us or not. I'm not sure.
It hadn't percolated at our level yet, but we can take it back and reconsider.
Okay.
But
I
I'm
mean,
pretty
I have
confident.
no idea how it's going to impact the city at all. No idea. I
Yeah,
just have that.
I think we'll be okay in the East End, but
Okay.
that's a
Yeah.
very good observation. Thank you, Lucy, and we'll take it back, but most likely we will keep that date because it worked for the majority of the people.
It's on my mind because that's the day my daughter wanted for her wedding, and it was not a good idea to do it that weekend.
That would be a slightly more challenging thing to.
Right, right. So
Oh,
we're in May.
thanks, Lucy.
All
All right, Stephanie, I'll pass it off to you.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
right.
Um, so I'm here to present a update on some activities in the park, the big park. A lot of you know that it was announced last year that because of changes in regulations at the state level, the PWSA, or Pittsburgh Water, as they're now known, is being required to take down the trees around the covered reservoir, and potentially in future years around the uncovered reservoir. And so, but they're looking at each separately and sequentially. So they're first turning their attention to the covered reservoir. And so we asked them to have a really rigorous public engagement process. And so in response to that request, they are planning 2 meetings in February, and we will be posting details and information on how to sign up. But I just wanted to put it on people's radar so they can block the dates. The first session is an information session. It's February 5th, which is a Thursday evening at 6:30, and that will be a Zoom meeting. And that particular meeting, reading the details, essentially, this is them providing information about the project, the why, the how, like what the background is, like why things have changed at the state level and how that is now affecting them. So the regulations that are driving it, what the opportunities are for public to give feedback on landscaping in the area, and also the constraints on what can be considered for landscaping, and to start planting seeds about the uncovered reservoir. So that's going to be the first session, February 5th. That'll be a Zoom meeting. The second session is going to be like a community design workshop. It's going to be in person at Tree Pittsburgh, and it's going to be on Saturday, February 28th from 11 until 1. And that's on me an opportunity to help shape the landscaping plans, giving feedback into what it will look like once the work there is done. They're going to be doing structural work to the reservoir itself, taking down the trees. There'll be a new fence put in, but then there's going to be opportunity for potentially trails or public art or benches and plantings around the base. So the second session will be an opportunity to like see, mock-ups of designs and give feedback. And you don't have to go to both, but if you want to attend the second one, it'd be useful to either attend the first one or I believe they're going to post like a recording of the first one online, just so you understand, again, sort of the background and the constraints that they're facing. So that, again, the first one is February 5th, a Thursday at 6:30 on Zoom. And again, we'll be posting the link on to register for that. And then the second one, which is the charrette to sort of give feedback into the landscaping designs, will be Saturday, February 28th from 11 to 1 at Tree Pittsburgh. So those are the two things that are moving forward with that particular project. Some other things, members of our park committee are still involved in sort of looking at Reservoir Drive and sort of improvements there. The bollards, I'm not sure if that's what they're called, those candlesticks they put up there, everybody hates. I know there's been pushback and requests to remove those and put in something more permanent, like planters that are also easier for drivers to process visually as they're driving up there. So that continues to move forward with members of our committee. We have a HES Run working group that I've talked about in past meetings that includes us, representatives from the HPCC, Pittsburgh Water, Duquesne Light, the mayor's office, various city agencies, Deb Gross's office, and some other nonprofits. And that group sort of was meeting monthly and was making progress to sort of address sort of some expanding work footprint that Public Works had back there to try to get them to contain their space a bit better. And they are amenable to that and working on plans to contain that space and to get some additional staffing so they can manage a smaller space more efficiently with the goal of reclaiming some of the space further down the valley that's been damaged and making it back into trails, or making trails rather, so that people from our neighborhood in Morningside can access the valley through trails. And eventually the long-term vision is sort of changing the parking for the zoo so that there's trails all the way down to the river. So that work we were making great progress over the spring and summer, and then in the fall, when City Council dove into budget hearings, it's sort of things that our meetings got put on hold. So those are going to start up again soon. So we will continue to be working on the sort of the reclamation of HES Run effort. And lastly, I think we've also talked about the doing more work to sort of as an organization to look at Highland Park as the need of the park to have sort of an advocacy group and a group that all these stakeholders can talk to when issues come up, since there's just so many different things happening. It's the water utilities, it's the recreational facilities, it's the road, it's the sidewalks, it's the playgrounds. There's like a lot of moving parts in the park, and there hasn't really been a consistent point of contact for them. So we're sort of working to sort of create an organization that can play that role. This is very much in the initial stages, but we're hoping to sort of start moving in that direction in the upcoming months. So I think that's everything on parks. If Beth and Tina, I don't know if either of you have any updates, but that's all I have. And I can take questions about those topics, but maybe there aren't any.
Any questions for Stephanie?
All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Really appreciate the work you're doing on that. I do want to really stress that meeting on February 5th. Um, they are talking about substantial changes to all the trees around the reservoir, and it's just a very important meeting if you can make that meeting. We have one more update from the Kids Committee. Our Kids Committee Chair Lori has made a date, play date at the Pittsburgh Toy Lending Library. We're really excited about that partnership. We're going to have kind of a pre-Valentine's Day party on Saturday, January 31st from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we will be providing a craft, a story time, and a snack. There is a slight admission fee to the Toy Lending Library if it's not your first visit, and that's $7. But of course, we will be providing a craft, story time, and a snack. So it should be a lot of fun, and we hope we can get some families out of the cold for a little fun play date for the community. And then now we're going to move on to our speaker. We have the CEO of the Union Project here, Jeffrey Dorsey, will be here and providing us some exciting updates.
Yes. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can. We just need to make you the spotlight. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Unless, Howard, you find him first. Beautiful.
All right. Can everyone hear me and see me okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Good evening, neighbors. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me. I see some familiar faces and some names that I know and many that I don't. So just want to introduce myself. My name is Jeffrey Dorsey, the Executive Director at Union Project. And I've been there, gosh, as of January 5th, that was my 16-year birthday. So I have been there now for quite some time and seen Union Project go through various stages as a nonprofit, but also in terms of, vision and mission. So just very briefly, for those of you who may not know or maybe know a little bit about Union Project, first and foremost, we are located at 801 North Negley in the beautiful, historic Second Presbyterian Church. Was built around 1901. And after its many years as a Presbyterian church, actually served as the East End Baptist Church more recently in its years. And we ended up purchasing the church back in 2002. Actually, it was purchased by the Pittsburgh Leadership Foundation in our name as we were becoming a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So we did purchase the church from them a few years later and are proud owners of this beautiful historic building in our neighborhood, and for many years have been doing lots of different things to try to both sustain and renovate and restore the beautiful structure itself inside and out, to the tune of about over $5 million at this point. And still counting. We have scheduled about $750,000 in roof and masonry improvements towards the rear of the building, upcoming this coming year. But also in terms of how to sustain a community organizations, we've been many things, all kind of focused around job creation, skill building, career building, opportunities for both community neighbors, but also people from around the region who maybe feel in the minority, either because of their race, their economic background, their gender, sexual preference, all these types of things. So we continue this day to serve a lot of those communities. And one of the key programs that has been around since the very beginning is ceramics. So I'm here tonight to really talk about what we're calling our ceramics expansion project. And I do want to say that if you're interested in the details of this, you can go to our website, unionproject.org, and we do have a special page dedicated just to the expansion itself. So let me see where to start. Again, many of you may know many things that we've done in the past, but ceramics has always been one of them. When I arrived in Union Project in 2009, we were running multiple social enterprises, and these are various ways to try to both create a big mission impact in who we served, but also generate enough revenue to sustain ourselves. And unfortunately, at the time, it was just after the 08-09 economic downturn, and we were facing really hard times. So thanks to those of you who stuck with us as donors, as volunteers, as participants in our programs, renting our space. There are so many ways to do that. We had to shut down some of our enterprises at the time. Some of you maybe you remember our stained glass program, which actually helped us renovate our beautiful stained glass windows, saving us over $1 million. We did finish that program and then had to shut it down after we finished our windows. We also had a cafe for many years and many iterations, which many of you may remember, which also was not only not earning the revenue we needed, but was in a really tight space. So after we were doing a job training program for youth baristas, we ultimately decided we needed to shut that down. So really, for the last 10 plus years, we've mainly been an organization focused on craft-based ceramics training and programs, and renting our space. And for a good 5-6 of those years, event rental was earning the majority of our revenue, and it was really helping us to subsidize our mission-based program through ceramics. Our ceramics program was growing in impact, it just wasn't generating the revenue that we had hoped. So in our 2016 strategic plan, we had really focused in on what would be the key drivers to help us grow in ceramics. And after a massive planning effort, we started to do some key things, which you probably noticed. We added a kiln shelter and outbuilding outside of the structure in our side lot, a beautiful a building that was made, actually renovated and put up by an Amish company, which was super cool because it went up pretty fast in a traditional barn raising style. And we used that for 3 gas-driven kilns. And that helped us expand our program and really started to not only maintain a lot of the artists that use our space, but attract new artists. And so our program started to grow. We also did some interior renovations around the programs so that we could expand the program, as well as got an award to be able to fund and purchase what we call the Wheelmobile, which you may have seen in the back. It's basically just a souped up van that can take our ceramics programs anywhere there's a road. So now we take programs all over the county. And those couple of strategic things, plus some other things that we did just to the building in general, really helped ceramics start to grow. We also had some key projects to help event rental grow. We added air conditioning in the Great Hall, which we thought would really be helpful in terms of, bookings for summer months, wedding season, things like that. We did some improvements in there with lighting, some electrical improvements, etc. However, when the pandemic hit in 2020, that really changed our situation. Event rental closed, as you all know, in a lot of places, really has never come back. And so that was really hard on us because that was kind of a key strategy for us in terms of revenue and growth. However, fortunately, the ceramics program started to speed up and surpass our expectations much faster than we thought with those key improvements. So in some ways, in terms of revenue and impact, they completely flip-flopped. What we had imagined would be the growth in event rental, we were seeing those same numbers both in impact of people and in revenue generated through ceramics. So it wasn't a total accident, even though the pandemic was unplanned, but it definitely sped up what we anticipated in our plan. So as of last summer, our board, after trying many things with event rental to try to get it to regrow, we realized we were in a situation where we had to make a choice about how to find more space for our very own ceramics program. And really the only space left in the building is the Great Hall. So all that is to say, our board voted to really end event rental as we know it as a main program for us at the end of December and start to renovate the Great Hall as use for 2 new ceramic studios and an exhibition space, which we've never had before. So if you've been in the Great Hall, or if not, you can imagine what was the original sanctuary of the building, about 3,000 square feet, with 25-foot soaring vaulted ceilings, beautiful 25-foot stained glass windows. I mean, it's a gorgeous space. So we are keeping all of that intact, and we are just what we call partitioning the space into three parts with 6-foot acoustic walls that are modular and mobile, so they're all on wheels. And then we're setting up on either end of the Great Hall the studio spaces. So we're adding new electric in the floor so that we can run wheels. We've purchased another, I think, 20 wheels, ceramic wheels, to bring into the space at either end. We've just finished acoustic improvements, which we've wanted to do even when we had event rental for years. We just spent about $30,000 on phase 1 of acoustic panels that are both on the walls and up in the ceilings to help improve the sound in there. We've improved the lighting. We just installed in the historic light fixtures that are hanging, there are 12. I just finished myself actually hanging new kind of state-of-the-art LED lights that can change temperature and brightness to improve the lighting in the space. And then we're also adding LED task lighting over what we're calling workstations in each of the classroom areas. And then we, of course, have work tables and all kinds of equipment. And then the center space is really staying open for both for the exhibitions as well as smaller events, artist talks. You know, we had a resident artist program grow pretty large right before the pandemic. We were having artists from all over the country come and speak and do residencies, and that had to stop. So this will give us a chance to attract them back, be able to show their work, as well as show the work of the students who are using our space all year round, and the artist members, which we have 25. And these are artists that we say are hobbyists to professionals. So we have many semi-professional and full-time professional ceramic artists that come through our space. Many have been with us for many years. Many are emerging artists, and then they go on to start their own studios. So we're really excited about this plan because not only does the Great Hall expansion allow us to have 2 classes running simultaneously in the Great Hall, both of which are bigger than the studio in the basement, but it also allows us to convert the studio in the basement completely towards memberships. And that allows us to more than double the number of members that we can have. And honestly, this is all in response to demand. Our demand since the pandemic just continues to grow. We've been delighted at how many community members now come to take a class because it's in the neighborhood and they can walk to it. It's a small group. You know, we usually have classes at 15 or less people. So during the pandemic, I think people felt really safe in terms of being in a community space, doing something creative. But we also now attract people from across the region. We have people who travel an hour and a half just because there's not a place like Union Project where they are. So the last thing I'll say, and then I want to open it up for questions, is really that, you know, we have been very strategic at how we've tried to grow. We've tried to be very respectful of the building and all of our decisions with this expansion. We do receive some funding from the state, so we have to go through a very rigorous process to get everything approved. Any changes that we propose in the state have to be approved, and that's all part of a 10-year covenant that resets every time we get a new grant from them. So now for the next 10 years, they continue to approve that. We did get everything approved. And then lastly, in terms of other ceramics and craft things happening in the city and the region, there are now many more ceramic opportunities around the region, much more than when we started, many of which have started as a result of people who've graduated from through the ceramics program at Union Project. But we are the most comprehensive program in that, unlike other spaces that might have classes or have a membership or have studio programs, we have all of those things, and we serve all ages, all skill levels from beginner to professional. So we are now attracting a lot more attention as an organization. It's been really interesting, actually, since we made this announcement back in December. We've had many new students show up wanting to work with us, as well as board members. We're always looking for new board members. If that is something that would interest you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Yeah, maybe I'll just pause there and see what questions folks have. Would it be possible, because I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, if someone wants to read the
I'll read
questions
it.
or
They're my
yeah,
questions, so I'll read them.
yeah. Hi, Howard.
Hi. I'm just curious, like, and you touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious, like, really, like, who are the competitors? You know, what are the alternatives for people
Yeah,
interested? And I was thinking about Manchester Craftsmen's Guild and also CCAC, because my sense is that you are attracting some low income or sort of, new into this
yeah,
uh, for people in the community. But I'm wondering, you know, I mean, it sounds wonderful, and you're responding to demand, and I'm curious, like, how far out does this projection go? And then where are the other places that are maybe also doing this who might, you know, in a couple of years, you find yourself potentially competing with them for students and
yeah. Yeah, thanks, Howard. Great question. So we benchmark our program about every other year, sometimes every third year, depending on what's going on, against, I don't always call them competitors, but it is. The reality is where they're, if you're choosing where to go, you might come to us or you might go somewhere else. But we do try to firstly partner with a lot of these places. That's one way we know like what sets us apart, what they're offering versus what we offer. A lot of it does come down to demographics. There are places in the North Hills Arts Center that offer some ceramics programs. There's, of course, the Center for the Arts that offers some ceramic programs. You mentioned Manchester Craftsmen's Guild. And then there are some smaller studios locally that also had taught small classes for a while. So to answer that question best, you probably have to look at like what the offering is. So a lot of those places I just mentioned offer very traditional classes like we do too. So one of the things that we do is we've been starting with those additions that I mentioned with the kiln shelter. We actually can offer some classes that they can't because we have more advanced facilities. We have some kilns that they don't have, which allows us to offer classes that they just can't. And so if folks want those, even if they like going there, they're going to come to us. Secondly, in terms of membership, the Center for the Arts does have a membership that's grown, but we try to always be a little bit under the price point, and we try to offer more availability in the studio. So there are definitely members that have stayed at the Center for the Arts. However, the person that runs the Center for the Arts is one of our former ceramic members. So that's another thing, which is almost every place that's running ceramics right now has some connection to a union project former member. And they all come back to us each spring when we run the Mother of All Pottery sales, which is coming up May 9th. Hopefully you guys have been to that. It's the largest ceramic sale in Western Pennsylvania. We bring over 40 artists, and last year they generated, I think, over $63,000 in sales, which all goes to local artists. So that's another thing too, what we do to promote local emerging artists and the opportunities we give them to show, to sell their work. Partners we work with who can give grants to artists to help them set up websites. We're a location that helps individual artists do small batch production pottery. So again, specializing, there are places that are studios that's all they do. We do that too in smaller scales. So we do often have artists come to us if they're working on a project for murals. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's a little bit around differentiation, specialization, knowing our market, communicating and connecting with those groups collaboratively when we can. And then a lot of it does just come down to who we draw from the various neighborhoods. And the fact that we aren't just, I guess this is really important to say, we're not just a ceramics organization. We were born as a community organization. So for us, first and foremost, we're thinking about how we build a more inclusive community. We just happen to do that through ceramics. So some of these groups were born as arts organizations. I'm not saying they don't care about those things, but it's in our DNA. So a lot of folks are coming to us because they honestly don't feel comfortable in some of the other places. And so we hope that that will change in other places, but we're really proud of the work we do around accessibility and inclusion too.
I
So
think that's really wonderful.
thanks, Howard. The one other question, maybe the part that you asked that I wanted to answer is you had asked like the plan, how far out does this go?
Yeah,
We
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we have a capitalization plan through 2029 that we finished 2 years ago that set out all of these strategies. Actually, before we knew we were going to expand, that became a thing we kind of was inevitable. We had no choice, but that was already laying out financial strategies for how to sustain our organization through 2029, our fiscal year, and we update that every year. And through that strategy, not only have we been able to earn the level of revenue that we were prior through event rental, but we've been adding staff. So if you go to our website, you'll see more staff than Union Project has ever had before. Now, a lot of that is part-time people who are teaching artists, but we are
Sure.
engaging and creating more job opportunities for teaching artists as well as members.
Hmm.
And we're also building a reserve, which we've never had before for Union Project. And if you know anything about, well, any building, but especially a historic building, as I mentioned, most of our projects, when we do a roof project, it's only a small portion of the entire project of the entire building, and it's often $500,000, easy.
Hmm. Right.
So a lot of what I do is fundraise around that aspect. And with the earned revenue we've been generating, we've started to self-fund our own reserves. So we now have a building reserve, an operating reserve, a kiln shelter reserve, a wheelmobile reserve. I mean, it's all because of the planning work and the
Mhm.
growing demand. So I will say, because obviously we're in appeal season, we're always looking and welcoming new donors. That building reserve is nowhere near the amount that it really should be to sustain, the
Mhm.
organization and feel safe. For example, we just put in a new boiler, and that was $36,000. And that was because, and that wasn't even planned. We had problems with it that we just couldn't fix.
Right.
So we do also work with some foundations, and I will say there's one foundation, you probably know of it. It's an anonymous foundation that has supported us very generously.
I think Jeffrey froze. He was about to name the anonymous foundation. And
I don't think he was about to name it.
At really, really
Jeffrey,
seeding.
Jeffrey, you
Jeffrey,
froze
you
up for a
froze.
moment.
Oh, sorry.
You froze at we had an anonymous foundation.
Okay, sorry. So I just wanted to say we have an anonymous foundation that we're part of their sunset strategy. And the next grant will probably be the last from them. We don't know the size, but it will be substantial. And that is specifically going to fund the reserve to really get it to the number that it needs to be. So we feel pretty good about where we're headed, and have plans through the next 4 years that we're updating on the regular.
We do have one more question about where is the mother of all pottery sale? Will it still be in the same location now that you're renovating?
Yes. Yeah, okay, so the renovations, believe it or not, the renovation is a $140,000 renovation. We're staying right at budget right now. We might go a little over. And
Okay.
our plan was to have the renovation done in February. So the mother of all pottery sales will take place, as it always has, at Union Project on May 9th.
May 9th. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice
Yeah,
work.
thanks for the question. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeffrey? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's really exciting to hear all the wonderful updates from your organization. You guys are one of the pillars of our community, and we're so lucky to have you guys as part of it.
Thanks. We feel the same way back at you all. We feel lucky to be in the neighborhood. We are so grateful for your support. The last thing I'll say before I go is just we will be inviting you all, and I'll make sure the information goes out to the council about to have a visit with the new space before the classes or maybe during the classes. But sometime we're hoping in February to announce a day to invite all the community members to come in, maybe try your hand on the wheel or throw some clay do some tours just so you guys can see what we've done before the sale. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. I know my family has taken a number of classes, and I love all the little pieces my kids create. So I can't wait for more of that.
Great.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you
good
all.
night.
Yeah, you too.
Our
Appreciate you all.
Thank you. Our next presentation will be from Ellen Garrett from Forward Studio. We've engaged that firm. It's an architectural landscaping firm over the last couple of months to help us reimagine what our parklet could be now that we've purchased it. So I'm going to leave the floor to Ellen.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen and jump right in because I want to be mindful of everyone's time today. Okay. For those of you I haven't met yet, or maybe if you weren't at the last meeting, my name is Ellen Garrett. I'm a landscape architect. I'm a native Pittsburgher, but our office is based in Brooklyn, New York. I'm back in Pittsburgh all the time. And so getting to do this project is really special for me, and an excuse to come back home more often. But yeah, we're working with Carnegie Mellon Architecture. Matt Huber sort of brought us onto this project. And we're also working with University of Pittsburgh students. We are, I'll jump to the next slide. We are at sort of a midway point of the community engagement process. We started with a questionnaire in the fall where we asked folks, what they were looking for in the parklet. That helped us to create a design activity that we did at Light Up Night. On December 6th, where we asked folks to layer in sort of physical attributes, and I'll go through sort of the results of all of these in a minute. But ask folks to kind of come up with their own designs of what they wanted to see in the parklet. And we use that information to refine down to 3 design options, which I'll share with you later in the presentation. And we'll be doing sort of another, not questionnaire, but another sort of Google Forms that we'll send out to ask people to rate each of those options. And then that will help us to narrow down to a single option, which we'll present later in the spring in a draft form, and then a final version in, let's say, May. We're still nailing down all of the dates, but that's sort of the projected schedule for now. So how many people have we actually engaged so far? We got 280 questionnaire responses, 48 from the sticker activity, which I'll share what that looked like. And then 35 responses from the design activity, just from the one night at Light Up Night. So we're at a total of 363 responses so far. We're obviously looking for more as we continue the project. But just to share sort of a quick look at some of the responses that we got, one of the questions we asked was what type of seating is most appropriate for the parklet. Dining, either a small group or communal, were the most popular. Third most popular was sort of a sculptural or dynamic seating. These aren't even mutually exclusive, like we could have sculptural dynamic dining seating. So all of these answers were really helpful for us to understand where people's sort of values and interests were with the parklet. We also asked, what kind of planting do you want to see? And overwhelmingly, people really wanted to see native perennial plants and shade trees. Although there was definitely interest in lawn and edible plants. And so you'll see in the design options, we tried to offer sort of a menu of different options. What's the right balance of paving to planting? We feel pretty good that most people do not want it to be mostly paved. That was overwhelmingly, most people wanted planting either half and half or mostly planted. So maybe somewhere in like the 60 to 70% range. Again, the different options show sort of a variety of percentages. In summary, what we're looking for, or what we heard was in terms of programming to really prioritize community gathering and events. So that might be movies, music events, holidays, community, like having community meetings there, having a variety of amenities for children and family. Um, so, also thinking about being playful, not just sort of in play equipment, but how can seating steps be playful and inviting? How can a stage platform that's not being used as a stage in that moment, how can that be sort of a climbing structure and invite that sort of whimsy and play on a everyday basis? For site elements, accessible mix of seating, primarily for dining. Um, Art and visual elements, so murals, sculptures, etc. A lot of people were interested in a pergola, like either something that's planted or a covered pavilion that would offer shade. Also adding things like lighting. We also got a lot of requests for things like garbage cans and just sort of more utilitarian things that we'll definitely incorporate into the project, regardless of what plan we end up taking forward. And then, yeah, planting was really like a 50-50 planted to paved ratio or mostly planted, and showing some options that have mostly natives, maybe an option for edible plants. And most people wanted to see their shade coming from shade trees as opposed to umbrellas or canvas or things like that. And then generally just trying to keep the planting to be lower maintenance. I say this on almost every project, there's no such thing as a no maintenance landscape. So we always try to build in as much low maintenance planting as possible. And then we're going to try to keep rhoda. That's definitely something we heard a lot of. I will say that we should be looking at maybe bringing on an arborist to just assess Rhoda's health before we make any promises one way or the other. But obviously, in this early stage, we're definitely looking at options that would keep Rhoda or prune back. So feedback from the questionnaire helped us get to the design activity, which this is sort of the base of. This was what we handed to people, and sort of a preset attributes. So people can drop in planting, tables, seating steps, pavilions, and we kept them somewhat generic. We also offered Sharpies that people, if they wanted to just draw in what they wanted to see in the parklet, that was also an option. And we started to group the responses that we got into three different sort of categories, which led to the different options. And just to give you some idea, this was one example, which if you start to look at what actually is layered in here, someone is showing on the Bryant Street side, there's sort of communal dining that's integrated with planting, nature play elements, so sort of like balance beams and stumps that kids can climb on, keeping rhoda, and then a stage or event space towards the alleyway side. So even just in how someone laid all of this out, this is really informative for us to really see programmatically where people want certain elements like within the parklet, not just generically, but actually starting to place them in space. So these are the three concepts. And I also want to say, Matt, if you have things you want to share, please jump in. Don't be shy. So the three concepts that we are sharing with you today, none of them are there's no sort of preferred concept. They are somewhat interchangeable in terms of the like formal expression. So concept two could be made to be more curvy if that was something that people are interested in. It's more just to show sort of the range of possibilities of from what we heard from the community. So those were the three options. I also wanted to quickly touch on the sticker activity that we did. So we shared sort of these example images with people at the light up night, and asked people to layer stickers on elements that they thought were interesting or that they did want to see. So green for things they liked, red for things they didn't like. And that was really helpful for us to determine like, okay, people really don't want something like this. It's maybe too formal. It reads like a corporate plaza versus something that's maybe a bit more rustic or feels more right for like a community park. So these were also helpful for us to then start to pull into the aesthetic of the parklet. So concept one that we're showing keeps Rhoda. Um, this one doesn't have any sort of lawn element. It does have a children's garden and sort of option for a movie screen against that facade, and also integrates sort of a native woodland palette. So you can see example images at the bottom here of like what that might start to look like. These curving shapes really help to create sort of nooks and sort of smaller spaces, all while creating a larger cohesive sort of gesture across the parklet. We know it's not a huge space, but also just by nature of having Rhoda in there, it helps us to break things down so that you get opportunities for larger gathering spaces towards the Bryant Street side, and smaller, sort of more intimate gathering spaces towards the alleyway side. And then this is sort of suggesting a more like Pennsylvania woodland palette where you might have, you know, some spring ephemerals and ferns. It really lends itself to being more of a shady garden that has sort of this like whimsical kind of Matt referred to as an enchanted forest children's theater in the back. So there's definitely a lot to play with there, which could be really fun. Concept two, maybe suggest pruning Rhoda back a little bit. Again, this would be something we would want to discuss with an arborist to just make sure that, you know, we're promoting growth and health in the plant. And this one does incorporate a small lawn. This one's really the most flexible for events. If you know these furniture elements are movable, those could be sort of temporarily moved off site, and you could set up, say, like a farmer's market. You could set up small tents. So this one has sort of larger paving spaces for that sort of activity. Sorry, I'm not keeping an eye on the chat. Are there like burning questions that we want to address now, or should we wait till the end? I don't want to leave anyone hanging.
I think you can wait.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can do questions at the end. So this one integrates seating steps. So one of the things that we didn't want to maybe bog people down with at the Light Up Night event is sort of thinking through the slope of the parklet, but that is something that I just wanted to mention. All three of the concepts do take that into consideration. So the seating steps, I think, really highlight that it integrates that into the sloped side of the hill, and uses that sort of natural formation to our advantage. So that way, if you have a movie screen here, you can have the seating steps. Again, it's something that can be used for passive everyday use if you're just grabbing lunch and sitting on the seating steps. It doesn't have to be activated as an event to feel like a space you can inhabit. This also, in terms of planting, sort of incorporates more of like a perennial meadow. Like there's more opportunities for clearings in this concept. So more perennial border plants, again, with rhoda. And then sort of this is just showing as an example, sort of a more like raw, like timber kind of aesthetic with the furniture elements. But these could all be, the image on the right is sort of an off the shelf picnic table. So not all of these have to be custom made. The seating steps probably would be, but we're definitely looking at options there, like what elements want to be custom, what could be standardized to save with cost and things like that. Option or concept three, this one is the only one that suggests maybe removing rhoda. Again, we can be flexible with that, but we wanted to show that as an option because some of the feedback that we got and the design activity did show removing rhoda. So we did want to keep that in the mix to just sort of get a sense of where people are at. And it really does open up the opportunity to create sort of a larger event space. So this one is really ideal for much larger. When I say much larger events, it's still a small parklet, so larger compared to the other concepts. But this incorporates a covered pavilion, a centralized lawn that would be sloping so that you're naturally sort of, facing the covered pavilion. And then on the Bryant Street side, we're incorporating what we're calling the picnic orchard, which would have larger sort of shade trees, but that might also be fruiting. And so that could be sort of in lieu of it being a community garden space, it could be edible perennials, which require much less maintenance than raised beds, but would still give people sort of this opportunity to like forage a little bit, maybe, or if we incorporated into the tables, maybe something that feels kind of like an herb garden, or you could just like grab some basil and add it to your lunch, or we can be idyllic. It's concept design. So just trying to find playful ways of incorporating all these wonderful ideas that we heard in the fall, and find ways to really bring that whimsy and that playfulness, regardless of whether it's sort of for kids or not. It's something that I think adults can enjoy as well. But yeah, all three of these are, again, sort of just throwing a bunch of ideas, and this is where we get to kind of talk about what we want to see where. So this is the opportunity for that. I'll share the QR code for this in a second, but we're asking everyone to rate each of the concepts. So not vote on, but rather rate. So you can say 5 for all three. You could give all three of them a 1 if you don't like any of them. And then we also are asking a follow-up question as to why. So maybe I gave this one a 1 because it just doesn't feel right for the neighborhood. Like you can give as much feedback as you want in that open response. And it'll really help us to understand sort of, again, are we digesting everyone's comments and ideas in a way that feels, intuitive and right for the space, and just making sure that we're staying on track with that, because that'll really help us to narrow down. So looking into the spring of 2026, so we're here at January with these early concepts, and we're asking everyone to rate them. So you can use that QR code on your phone. This will, I believe, also be sent out in the mailer that's going out in February and March. And that will then help us to narrow down to a single plan that will preview sometime in April, share back with the community sort of a draft plan. We'll get feedback on that and then come back in May with the final version. Did I miss anything, Sabrina or Matt? Is there anything else you want to mention? Otherwise, I think we can take questions.
I just wanted to emphasize the point you made at the end when people are giving feedback that we're not voting on one of 3 options and picking one of these concepts. Each of these 3 concepts highlights different themes we heard in the feedback. And the final concept will probably be some kind of amalgamation based on feedback about these concepts. So it's not like pick which one you think we should go with, and that's what we're going to do. This is still an iterative process moving forward.
The other, there was a comment, and maybe you can address this, but in your deliverable in May, will that have like estimated construction costs and estimated maintenance costs?
So the goal is the plan that we develop in May will be both an illustrative version that can be used for fundraising and a technical version that can be used for cost estimation. So we don't do the cost estimating ourselves, but the plan that we deliver to you can go to a cost estimator and they would be able to give you a breakdown. Yeah.
Okay, so we would put that out to bid for construction. Is that the idea?
So, the plan itself is not it's still concept level, so it won't be sort of construction documentation level yet. But rather, again, get a cost estimate. We'll probably need to go back and sharpen our pencils once we get that. But also then know like in terms of benchmarks for fundraising is my guess. So I don't know, maybe that's a better question for Sabrina.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what kind of, when you say cost estimator, what kind of person or profession is that?
There are firms that do cost estimation. But yeah, I mean, I guess that would be a good time to also maybe engage a contractor. So it can be kind of more of a design build in that way. But we haven't really talked about uh, what that might look like quite yet. But the goal was to just have a plan that can be then handed off to someone who could give you hard numbers.
Okay. Can you turn off the screen share if you're
Oh,
done?
sure.
That way we can,
Yeah.
and I can pin you or spotlight you for the Q&A.
Great.
Can you see the
Um,
hands going up? Beth?
oh, great. Um, are there, oh, someone with an actual hand. Okay, Beth. I see Beth with a hand up.
Hi, I'm on the board. Thank you so much for all the hard work you've done. There's two questions in the chat around maintenance. So,
Okay.
as a community group who will do the thing, create the thing, and then have a volunteer committee that we already have, a Parklet committee that has to then maintain the thing. There's two things in the chat just about like what that could look like. Like, how many people are we talking? What is like the long-term look at that? And the ask in the beginning was for all three concepts to do like an estimate of, what's evergreen, what could change, floral fauna, like sort of temporary stuff versus hardscape or things that are going to need other kinds of maintenance. And if a volunteer group can handle that sort of thing. Those are sort of some of the questions.
Sure. Yeah, I think we're still in such early phase with the concept design, like showing sort of a green patch is like not knowing exactly what kind of planting is going in there, which would really determine a lot of the maintenance on that end. I think the goal definitely being to keep maintenance low. I don't think we're going to be proposing like, paving that has to be like continually resealed every season. Like it could be something that's a bit more, I don't know, robust. But again, we haven't gotten into any of the materials really yet. But that is something we'll be definitely thinking about as we get into sort of narrowing down to a single plan.
Thank you
I
for
know
that
it's
answer.
not a
Because
great
no, it's a great
helpful.
answer because we're in the concept phase. So we're just
Yeah.
gathering community feedback. But I think us as a council and a volunteer group, once we get there, which I get that we're not there yet, you never want to have a big design happen. And then in 5 years, it looks awful because the group couldn't maintain it. So it's just something for us to consider as we move forward in the process.
Yeah, there are a few things like just from having done this enough to know that like for example, like a community garden like requires a lot of like maintenance regularly for it to look good. And so I think that's something that we heard a lot of people say like community gardening, but then there was a program question of like how often would you community garden? And most people said never. So that was an indicator to us that maybe like okay, people like the aesthetic of a community garden, but don't necessarily want to put in the like time to have to like upkeep it. So are there ways to bring that aesthetic and have it be someone that like, okay, maybe there's one or two people that are doing maintenance, but it doesn't require a team of people to be doing like harvesting daily. So the edible landscape would require more maintenance, but if it's edible perennial plants, that's a lot less than say like annual vegetables that you're replanting every year. So things like that, like we can tweak and just make it a little bit more like in the spirit of things, but lower maintenance. So those are some things we're playing around with in concept design.
Hi, this is Howard. I totally appreciate what you just said. I completely agree. As a treasurer, I'm all for low maintenance. Um, and I was also thinking, I think we have to think about these things not in as part of the overall community where there are gardens where people can garden. There's going to be a new city-run orchard where people can go and pick fruits and stuff like that. And I think there's been a little bit of a maintenance concern around was it is like a mulberry tree or whatever it is, drops fruit and then leads to, sort of cleanup concerns on the benches. So, so and I mean, I know this is like way ahead, the cart way ahead of the horse, but the way I see it, it's not the kind of place where we're going to have people staffing it on the regular. That's not how we use it. It's used, and people want it, and people want it to be lovely. But it's not. There's not going to be like a person whose job it is to be there. Um, and let me just answer Linda Lane's question, which is the Highland Park Community Council has a liability policy that covers the park and activities in the park,
Um,
as well as events. Stephanie has her hand up.
Hi, I'm trying to get back on camera. Hi. I just sort of piggybacking on what Howard just said. People might not know this because I don't know how widely announced this has been, but the city is going to be planting pick your own orchard in the park down on Stanton Ave near the forestry building. So that's going to be starting this spring, or at least the work is starting this spring. I'm not sure. The plants probably won't be mature enough this spring, but in any case, the concern I would have about like an orchard or something with like fruit is that historically, when we first got the property, there were some issues with rodents because the restaurants keep trash right behind the privacy fence there, and the neighborhood does have like rodents. This is sort of a reoccurring challenge, and so and because it is not routinely maintained, like the berries that Howard was talking about fall, like not all the fruit would be harvested, and so like the fact that there'd be like down fruit on the ground, you would definitely run that risk. And then I had two questions, or another just general concern or something to think about is like in one of the designs there was a covered pavilion in the back, and one thing that we need to be cognizant of is like safety and how it's used, like having dark spaces where people can maybe hang out at night is not something from a public safety perspective that we necessarily want in the community park. So if you wanted something like a covered shelter, like that might be better at the other end, even though that's where the slope is. So I know that's a different challenge, but like something that's more visible as opposed to something that's like tucked in a back. Like I like the idea of a cubby hole, right? That's like your backyard, but like in that space, there might be some public safety reasons not to sort of steer away from that. That. And then the other question I had was just I couldn't tell. Again, it's hard to see conceptualize it, like how much space there was for running around. Because I just feel like I know now, like the way it's used, and part of this is because of what's there, is like you often see families come and they bring food, they get food at the restaurants and they sit at the tables, and then like the kids just get together and play, right? And so there's enough open space for just play. And so I know there's like this nature, and some of them have like a nature area with like things to climb on and stuff, but again, it's just hard to conceptualize when you see the drawings, like how much space they have for just like open play. So that's it. Those are just comments. I don't necessarily.
No, thank you. That's great.
Just to like make people aware that there's some other concerns that you might not have thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's definitely opportunity to, like, if we wanted to expand the lawn a little bit more, but yeah, I hear you. I think wanting to make sure there's a right balance of free space and not everything be programmed down to an inch of its life.
I'll keep talking as long as nobody else is raising their hands, so please raise your hands. One of the things about the grade, and I'm sure you've thought about this, but as we were like putting up those the picnic tables that are there, we were concerned, and the city asked us to pay attention to ADA accessibility. And as we've kind of looked at the slope and thought about, any change we make to it, like once we start improving it, I, I'm I'm not an expert, but I'm assuming that once we start to make a change and we start going through permitting processes, then we're going to be asked about accessibility. So I really appreciate that you didn't constrain this part of the process, but I think going forward, incorporating accessibility is going to be really important. And I'm not really sure what that means in terms of the designs that you have and where that takes it. But I just wanted to float that out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think again, to not bog down people in this stage, we didn't annotate any of that on the plans, but each of the plans has been sort of in the background thought through in terms of ADA accessibility. So all of the paving would be accessible, like ramps under 5% so that you don't need railings, cross slopes 2% or less. Like it's sort of background math that we're doing when we're laying these things out. But um, we'll obviously want to take a much sharper pencil to that and like the next phases of the project. But each of the plans does consider that. So um, like using planters to kind of make up grade changes between like the sidewalk and maybe the interior of the parklet. So that way you can sort of level it out in the middle so that you don't have like it doesn't feel like everything is on a slope, even though the overall site is sloping. So things like that. But yeah, we are thinking about it. It's just not maybe annotated in these plans to say like what grades are what quite yet. Because yeah, they're still kind of sketchy.
Yeah, you might want to, I don't know, in the next round of public communications, maybe like just put a bullet point, because I'm raising it. I know people in the community will ask that
Mm,
question as they start to interact with more, you know, more real plans and so that people don't get hung up on it. I appreciate your
absolutely.
your 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 answer, and I thank you so much that for kind of like bringing to the foreground what's been in the background.
Sure. Yeah, and also I think yeah, it's definitely worth noting somewhere, maybe in the Google form we send around, just that all paving, everything will be accessible, like ADA to code,
Mhm. Yeah.
in order to get passed by, permitting and things like that. But yeah, we we'll make sure it's all accessible.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ellen. If we have additional questions, feel free, first, please use the survey. I think a lot of your thoughts and questions and concerns can be articulated through our survey link that we will be pushing out. And board members, we will also have a lot more time to discuss internally. But please, everyone complete the survey. And this is just such an exciting project, and you guys have just done such a fantastic job with all of our community input that we really appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank
Ellen.
you. Yeah, it takes a
Um,
village. So thank you too
it sure
for
does, doesn't it?
all the feedback we've gotten so far.
All
I
right.
can see the chat and I will uh yeah. Are there questions that I didn't answer? I just want to make sure before we jump. I also don't want to take too much
I
more
I
time,
thought
but
we covered the chat, but I am looking too.
Yeah, I think we've touched on everything. I was kind of tracking it.
okay,
Um,
great.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me and I'll see you all soon. Thanks again.
All right, thanks, Ellen. And thank you everyone
Thanks,
for
Ellen.
attending our community meeting tonight. Our next one will be on February 19th at 7 p.m. And so just please stay tuned to your email and our social media as we push out some additional announcements. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.